Hi, I'm Pluto York, and this is my channel, Patchwork Legalism. Like many of you, I'm a longtime enjoyer of YouTube. I find it an amazing source of information and conversation and, learning and academic rigor. And recently I was watching two videos on Peter Singer's famous paper from 1972, where he goes into, a proof where we're all immoral people. What those two videos had in common, though, was they both asked for the audience's response. And because this paper is so old, it's over 50 years old, and because just through the two videos I found a total lack of responses in the language that I would use in response, I thought it a good idea to start this channel as a precursor to begin the response to that paper. Now, there's many other topics that I'd love to respond to, and so this channel will be used for those. But first off, I wanted to lay out my own perspective on how I deal with my own morality. Now, I call it patchwork legalism. Patchwork is the unique identifier that makes this particular set of legalism different than the Eastern legalism or the Western legalism or Christian legalism, so that when we're talking about legalism, we're not mixing my beliefs, which I want to articulate and separate from other forms of legalism. But legalism is legalism. And so I want to go through how this particular set of legalism is different. And legalism is at the core of my own personal beliefs and my own morality. And then in response, once you have a good grounding in what legalism, how I view my own version, patchwork legalism, you'll see how I respond to Peter's paper in the next video. So, what is the purpose of ethics? What is the purpose of morality? And I say we all have diverse needs. We all have a long list of desires. Some of those naturalistic, some of those constructed, and we have the need to figure out how we morally, ethically pursue these needs, because there's a lot of way you can pursue your needs unethically, and so we want to draw some boundaries and make sure that we're doing this ethically and morally, and then we also want to make sure that we're actually getting those needs fulfilled in the end. Especially, I'll go into two of my favorite ways of discovering these basic needs, objective list theory, and then just the living wage research. I love objective list theory because it's more philosophical and it's more about going through the literature and seeing what people are saying they need. And I love the living wage research because it's very practical. They're literally going country to country, figuring out what people are procuring for themselves in the term of goods and services, and then saying if it's this common and it's this important, clearly this is a list that could then be constructed into a list of human needs. So there you go. That's the challenge. And then just on the slide here on basic needs, this is the objective list theory. We have life, we have knowledge, autonomy, achievement, friendship. So you're trying to procure all of these different emotions in many cases. Autonomy is an emotion. And then also some physical needs. And then as we move into basic needs from the living wage, you get things like housing and food and healthcare and education and clothing, utilities, transportation, childcare, and some risk management. And what is immediately clear is that there is no one organization which will procure or even help you procure all of these. Now, I'm saying I'll go into that group membership is a huge part of the patchwork framework that I'll be laying out here. Why? Because I think that we're all part of many, many groups. And I am somewhat of a individualistic leaning person, but the way that I get there is by acknowledging the fact that collective action is more efficient in the vast majority of cases than individual efforts. So why aren't you a collectivist? And then I say, however, there are no groups which procure all of my needs. For example, if I'm a chess player, I need a club, right, that plays chess. I'm not going to go to the federal government and say, where's my chess club? They're going to say, well, you have the freedom to create a chess club, but this isn't the place where you do it. The reason I then end up in individualism or individualistic tendencies is because each of our unique desires and our unique uses of our autonomy, our leisure time, and even our professions and our religious, once you take each of those sectors, right, the supermarket, which is part of the market system, if I'm a member of Costco is procuring a great number of my physical needs, right? If I go back to the list on basic needs, they're perhaps helping with food, they're perhaps helping me with education and clothing, maybe even transportation if I'm buying a car through Costco. They're not doing the chess club, and they're certainly not doing the religion. I still have to go out and find a philosophy club or a church to help me with that. And so you see how these different groups, which are all collective action, when Costco goes to procure things, they are doing it on behalf of a very large and powerful economic group, and because of that, it's much, much more efficient than, say, if I were to go down to the farmer and negotiate for my eggs and then go to the peanut butter manufacturing plant and procure my own peanut butter, right? So collective action, I think, clearly wins on that side. But when you look at the unique kind of set of groups that I would prefer to be part of to fulfill all of my own personal needs, then I end up in individualistic tendencies. And then I say I'm a patchworker, where I'm patching federal government with state government, with local government, with Costco, with the philosophy club, with membership in a local gym, or all of those different memberships. Netflix is also a collective action membership where I'm asking them to procure my entertainment, as I do with YouTube and the entire YouTube community. So YouTube community is a collective action group, and I consider myself a member of that group, and I benefit from all of the work that others do, and others, hopefully, through this channel, benefit from the little bit of work that I do. And so that's where you end up. Now, one of the first and core principles of patchwork legalism is I say that of the many groups that you're part of, you're most likely going to be part of a geographical jurisdiction. And then I'm going to also make the claim that this geographical jurisdiction has supremacy over the other groups within the ethical and moral framework that I'm labeling as patchwork legalism. Now, why do I do that? It's completely practical, right? Like, if I live in Palm Springs, California, then I'm going to be part of, and I'm a U.S. citizen, then I'm a member of the American citizenry, and I have access to all of the benefits of holding that passport. So I'm part of the federal system. I'm also part of the California state. I'm also part of Riverside County. I'm also part of the city of Palm Springs. And so you can see how geographically I've designated myself for particular memberships into a geographical jurisdiction, and to this, I think this is a bold claim in ethics, to take the stance that the local laws have supremacy in my life over the other groups, including my religious group, including my chess club, including my Costco membership. While it may not sound fantastical, I doubt that there are many other philosophies, religions, ways of living that would make the same claim. They would outright come out and say, yes, you must be part of a geographical jurisdiction, and that the laws, and this is again why it's legalism, the laws, the rules, and the boundaries that are established there are at the top of your list when you're making considerations of the actions that you have available to you, and then from those actions making a choice to act. I've lived in other places. I have been in countries that cover all four hemispheres: north, south, east, west. In fact, I have a driver's license that's valid in each of the different hemispheres. And so it's not the case that I believe that a person is always bound to a single geography. There are many geographies which do not have many choices where the individual can move. But I'm saying that an individual both has the opportunity and perhaps the personal responsibility to move to a geographic location where they're willing to, say I'm a member, take on all of the responsibilities of membership within that geographical location, and then live in accordance to that decision. I'm also saying that, and I can get into this in future videos, that I do believe that one of the reasons that your local geographically defined set of rules ought to take priority in your life is because, in most cases, they're a long-standing tradition with a lot of pragmatism behind them. When you live in California, you're both part of common law, which goes back centuries, if not millennia, all the way back to the beginning of Rome, and then has been tested and tried and retested and validated to be a good way to bound a system. In California, we also are part of the civil law tradition through the occupation of California by Spain. They were originally under Spanish rule, which was different than British rule, and the Spanish system is a civil law system. And so there are benefits and disbenefits from both the common law and the civil law. And then you have 200 years or 250 years of tradition from the American system, if not more than that. And so those are well tested and well debated and well organized. And then you have the California system, which is well over 100 and some odd years old. And so you have all of those laws and traditions and rulings that are debated. And then you have a bunch of new rulings which have gone through a political process which is participatory. And through that participatory, these have been made for the local area. They're also well documented. When I moved back to California, so I spent my childhood in California, I spent some of my adult years outside of California. When I moved in and out of California, there wasn't a lot of ambiguity to, when they post a speed limit, they mean that that's the speed limit, right? There's not a lot of ambiguity to, if you get a job, here's the income tax. If you go to make a purchase, here's the sales tax. And those are both obligations. When you buy a house, here's the insurance requirements. Here's what you can do with your property through zoning laws. All of that is well documented. And because I'm making the claim that out of both pragmatism that yes, treating your geographic location with supremacy is probably a good idea, but there's also the longstanding traditions, and the legalism at its core is, tell me what the rules are, right? Let me participate in the generation of those rules. Let me choose whether or not I want membership, so I don't have to live in Palm Springs. For $600, I can move anywhere in the world, and with the education that I have, I can literally get a job in almost any country that I imagine. So when I have made the selection to live in a particular city, let's say Palm Springs, that should carry the weight of I've elected to be a full member, well knowing what that membership entails, right? So I know what the tax system is. Now, as a participant in that system, if I want lower taxes, I can participate in the rule-making system and try to change it. I can also move to a different location. I have plenty of choices all over the world. And if there's, if I want zero taxes on everything and I still want local parks and well-maintained roads, great utilities, I can look around the world and see if that exists, and it doesn't. So any place with well-maintained roads and well-maintained utilities obviously has a tax system to support that. And so I don't think it's wrong. In fact, I think it's absolutely right. And legalism is going to be built on this, that when you elect to be a member of a group, an organization, when you have other choices, when you have the freedom to leave, then you are also accepting the responsibilities if they're well documented. And yes, many of you are going to say, well, in many cases, some of these responsibilities aren't well documented, and I'm going to later make the claim that any obligation which is not well documented is not an obligation, not a true obligation. But let's start off with geographical jurisdiction supremacy. So there's that concept. I'll then move on to, we've discussed this a little bit, jurisdictional legalism, where once you're in a jurisdiction which has topical authority, and in the U.S., we not only have your city, your county, your state, your national, but we also have regulatory bodies. And then as being part of the U.S. system, for example, I may have to comply with EPA. Again, I have the choice to move to any country I want in the world. But if I decide to stay, then I consider myself bound by those restrictions. I also believe that these systems are participatory, that if I really feel strongly about something, I can participate in the changing, and there's plenty of organizations which focus on changing the regulations in the U.S. And again, I have the vote with your feet option to go live someplace else if I feel they're that inhibiting to, again, the basic list. Like, am I able to get housing? Am I able to get food? Am I able to get health care? And there are topics here that we can get into in future videos. And I encourage you to post your topical question of how does patchwork legalism deal with this particular issue. It might be something in the news, might be something someone said, but you're welcome to post those types of those requests. So let's just go through the basic framework then. We all have ongoing unmet personal needs and preferences, right? I like food, maybe not the same thing every day. How do I get that met, right? Is Costco going to be the only way I do that? No, there's lots of other ways that I get my food, as well as my housing, my health care. I have a need for income and being productive, so I'm going to be looking for a profession, and then from the profession, I'm going to be choosing my option to choose a workplace. At the profession level, I might be part of a professional community. I might be part of a union. I might be part of a vocational school or an academic school. There are many ways that I would support that profession. And each of those groups has the opportunity to be a member. Each of those groups, in the vast majority of cases, have a participatory rulemaking system, and each of those groups would then would have duties so let's say the professional group had dues. Okay, I pay the dues, and then they would also list out the benefits, and we could test over time if they were keeping those benefits. I think we all know how that works. So pragmatic patchworking, the first thing I'll say is the individual is the patchworker. So who's the patchworker? It's the individual. And what you're doing, you're taking inventory of your needs. Hey, I wish I had a little more exercise in my personal life. What are the groups that where membership in that group results in a life that includes more exercise? I might consider a gym. I might consider a walking group. I might consider a lot of things. A sports club. But you first then take inventory. What are the gaps between what you need in life and what you're actually getting? And then where are the groups that are highly successful in that? And again, you can reassess your geographic location. If you really love playing soccer, you might not want to live in Seattle. If you really love biking, you might not consider Seattle because of all the rain, and you might look for an area. You might not consider Phoenix because it's so hot. Like, who wants to play soccer in 100+ weather? But you might look for a geographic location that meets those needs. And then you're balancing all of this. You're going and you're testing. Do I like this area? Do I like what I'm offering? Do I like this gym membership? Do I like this Costco membership? Would I prefer Sam's Club? All these things. But we often, because at the end of the day, it's collective action. Once you get into one of these groups, it's very likely that there are others that you can ask for advice. You can definitely ask somebody in one of your current groups. Let's say you go to church every week. Hey, I need to get more exercise. What are you doing to get exercise in your life? And they say, I got a gym membership, so on and so on. So, but the patchworker and the responsibility of the patchworking is the individual themselves, and the quilt that they end up with, as I've said at the top, is highly individualistic. Why? Because our needs are individualistic, and therefore our memberships in each of these groups are going to be unique to ourselves, even though each and every one of these groups are shared by often millions of people, right? There's millions of people watching Netflix, but we do not all have the same set of nutritional or other needs in life. Legalism, and especially what I'm laying out here in patchwork legalism, requires that all obligations not only be explicit, but they be time-bound. So I don't think it's fair that we make up rules today and then backwardly apply them. This is a general principle in in common law for sure, that we can't change the speed limit to 35 and then have a recording of everybody who drove on the street when it was posted 55 and then start handing out tickets at 35 when everybody was reading a sign that said 55. And not only can you not do that ethically and morally for the speed limit, I'm also making the claim that it's not ethical or moral to do that for any other topic in life. And yes, you can. I always see, and we always get into these debates on YouTube. We want to take modern standards and apply them to 16th century people and say, well, clearly today the speed limit is 35, and clearly you were driving 55 in the 1600s, and clearly you deserve a ticket. I'm saying no, let's look at the posted speed limit and the explicit speed limit. So legalism is also making the claim that unwritten laws are not something you have to adhere to. Now, you take a great risk, but I'm saying that risk is personal and perhaps at the group level. For example, if we don't have laws on AI, and there's an AI research company that wants to go off and do some funky stuff, claiming, well, there's no rules to do this, I'm hoping and we can test this pragmatically, that if harm is caused, that there is some sort of law that already captures, in common law we have torts. So if AI were to destroy my garden for whatever reason, I would have the tort of trespassing to say, hey, you destroyed my garden, pay up for that. And that we've tested many of the different types of harm, and therefore if a new thing doesn't have an explicit law, we can still apply common law in many cases, at least in the U.S. Hopefully other jurisdictions have similar systems which protect us from new things, but yes. And this is also why I think participatory rulemaking is important, because if there are new harms being created by new technology, or just new actions, emergent actions by people, and that we convene an action committee quickly, that we set the rules, and then we republish those new sets of rules, so that, if we want the speed limit to be 35, that we get those posted signs up as quickly as possible. We take down the old ones as soon as possible, and that, the people then vote with their feet. Well, I don't want to live in a city with a speed limit of 35. Palm Springs is probably not for you. Go live someplace else. But the time boundness of, and the disclosure and the transparency requirements are all core pieces of the proposed patchwork legalism system that I'm laying out. Nonviolent persuasion is obviously borrowed from many other traditions, and it's a highly pragmatic way for rulemaking. One of the benefits of rulemaking is that you get to set new benefits every time you set new rules. So when you have a moral system that simply says, here's a new rule, and we'll get into that when we get it, especially when we get into Peter Singer's paper. He'll create a new rule, but there are no new benefits, and his rulemaking wasn't participatory. He just creates a new rule and then starts labeling people with highly derogatory terms, and much of what he is doing is absolutely nonviolent, and so in that case I think it's perfectly okay. But certainly if we were to make rules in a violent way, that would break the civility of the system. And yes, I'm hoping that legalism includes civility. And then you have, this will also, as we grow into this slide, the cross-group responsibilities, be a highly controversial slide, I think. Because, the first two basic principles here are going to be super easy to understand. Intergroup responsibilities. If you join Costco, and the duties are you have to pay $50 a month for membership, right? When they deny your benefits, entrance to the club and the ability to purchase things, because you have not met your duties, the payment of the $50, we all say, well, okay, pay the money, and then you get the benefit. And there are many different organizations. For example, in the United States, if you're caught and you got 3 years of jail time, and until you do those 3 years, you don't get to vote. You can't show up to the voting box and say, "Hey, I'd like to vote," and people say, "No, you got to do the time," and then sometimes you get your right to vote back, sometimes you don't. But inside the group, I think it's much less controversial. Intergroup, what I'm saying is, because we're building a patchwork, many of our groups touch other groups, right? The city touches the county touches the state touches the nation, the city touches the nation, and so there's intergroup agreements, and I'm saying all of these need to be explicit, they need to be transparent, they need to be time bound. You can't create a new rule at the national level and expect cities to comply with that without giving them time to comply. And I am also making the claim that when you have rules that are not participatory, that is a foul, and we should work to make sure that the groups that we adhere to are participatory in some manner, and or they're simply super transparent, right? Like Costco doesn't hold a poll to decide what the price is going to be. Netflix certainly doesn't hold a poll to see what the price hike is going to be. So if they're non-participatory, I'm still okay with that, especially when they're light, like a purely discretionary purchase like Netflix or Costco. But they need to be transparent, right? And they need to be time bound. So Netflix can't say, well, the news subscription is $50 and it's 2 years retroactive. We'd all cry foul. But this last paragraph here, or bullet point, is what I think is really going to be controversial, where I'm saying extra group responsibilities. That when you are not part of a group, you do not have responsibilities to that group. So, as an American with an American passport, I am not part of, let's say, the France legal system. Now, there are intergroup responsibilities. There are a ton of treaties and a ton of commitments that I make when I go, if I were to, visit France, and those might fall under, my own. I want to be part of the people that are currently residing or just existing within France. There's a set of commitments they ask me to make upon entry. I make them. I'm now responsible for those. There are treaties between France and the group that I adhere to, let's say the American system, and so I'm responsible for following all of those. But in the case that there truly is an extra group, let's say the Costco of France, I'm not a part of that group. I have zero responsibility to that group. Even I'm saying if you exit your membership, your gym membership, you were a member last year, you're not a member this year, they went from an intergroup where you had intergroup responsibilities because you're a member of that group to now an extra group. And I'm saying once you have the ability to leave, you've left, and you no longer have responsibilities to that group. So this will be controversial as we go forward. And yes, because this raises some obvious questions, you can start to ask questions. Well, how would you apply to this, that, and that? Poke holes in this. I certainly don't think that 11-slide document that I came up on a weekend in preparation of responding casually to a video I saw online is going to be complete in any sense. So here it is, and let's go forward with that. Thank you for watching if you made it this far, and I look forward to future videos together.